Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by the Union Capital Corporation and Maytel's Air Conditioning and Heating, a proud sponsor of the St. Jude Dream Home.
Good evening, New Orleans, and welcome to the post-Christmas edition of Inside New Orleans Sports. Hope you and your family had a wonderful Christmas holiday and you got everything you wanted from Santa Claus. I'm your host, Eric Asher, and over the next hour, we're going to talk some local sports. The New Orleans Saints, the New Orleans Pelicans, the LSU Tigers, and the Tulane Green Wave. And to break it all down for us, we got a great panel for you tonight. Ramon Antonio Vargas of the New Orleans Advocate and sports director for WWL TV, Doug Mouton. Guys, welcome. Thanks so much for being with us. Appreciate you guys coming down. Hope you had a wonderful Christmas.
Very nice, yes.
Thanks for having us.
But before we get started, we always like to find out what's going on with our guest. And Ramon, we'll start with you. Tell us a little bit about what's going on at the Advocate, your beat, and a little bit about what's happening with the newspaper.
Yeah, I mean, we've got a great new edition being printed in New Orleans. The Advocate also expanded its presence in Acadiana. Just trying to, we know in New Orleans there's still a demand for a daily newspaper, and people still like to get, if you went to the game in Charlotte and they just watched it on TV, to kind of get your words and your take on it from afar. So that's kind of what we've been focusing on. I'm just started covering the team in the preseason, wrapping up lots. Right. Learned a lot in the first
right.
in the first season so far. But it's been a dramatic season. I don't think anybody cannot say that. So it's been.
Well, you're doing a great job, by the way.
I appreciate that.
Doing a great job, and of course, Doug Mouton of WWL TV, sports director. Doug, welcome and thanks for being with us tonight.
Thanks. It has been a busy football season. We actually debuted we've done the high school football show for years. We actually brought it over to Channel 4, which was something that I pushed for in a big way and something I'm so happy we do. What happens is, when you have general managers and bosses from other places, they don't quite get the impact of high school football. Our general manager now is a St. Augustine graduate, and he gets it. We moved the show to 10:15 on Friday nights. We do a quick 20-minute show. The results were great. The ratings were great. It went over in a big way. It was so much fun to do that. 4th Down on 4 runs year-round, 52 weeks. That's the granddaddy's been around 30 years now. And we did a bunch of specials around LSU games. Every game CBS had, we did specials. So it's been an interesting football season. For us, the football season gets much more manageable at this point once you're not covering so much. But I can tell you, we've already had a meeting to put a Super Bowl plan together because you have to do that. Right. You have to be ready. Are we going to get there this year? If you had asked me 5 weeks ago, I would have been more optimistic maybe than I am now. But we've worked out preliminary plans to go to New York and be there and cover the Saints in a big way. But boy, it's been like this with the Saints this year, so we don't quite know yet.
Well, hopefully that comes to fruition for everybody involved, from the Saints to obviously the media to the fan base, which
no doubt.
And was anticipating that, especially after the great start.
Yeah, 5-0, you start thinking you're going to get there.
You better believe it.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's kind of this week the air's been kind of let out the proverbial balloon out of the fan base, but they'll bounce back for Sunday against Tampa Bay. And of course, the Saints fall to Carolina, 17-13. They defeated Carolina here in the Dome, 31-13. Guys, first question out the box is: some are now questioning Sean Payton's decisions, his coaching decisions, the fake field goal, the second half challenge, the reverse, the throwing the ball in the monsoon. Ramon, we'll start with you first. Your thoughts on the game plan that was set up against Carolina?
Defensively, I mean, I don't think you can argue with anything they did. Even Coach Payton afterwards said that they did everything that they needed to do defensively to win the game. I think stopping Carolina 0 for 9 on third downs, and I mean, they became the first team this year, I think, to have won a game without converting a first down on third down. So, defensively it was great. I mean, offensively, I think everything you said definitely inspired some second guessing in Coach Payton. I mean, that's he'll never lose a game because he's scared to take a chance. And I think when it works out, everyone's talking about how bold he is and how fortune favors the bold. When it doesn't work out, well then, and it's a close loss especially. It's tough for anyone to stomach and who observes the team. So I think that's where we're at. I mean, I think if one of the what impressed me, I think the most about, for example, the Chicago win. You never felt that they were trying to win the game on one play. What impressed me in the San Francisco game, despite all the adversity, all the turnovers early in the game, they never tried to send it like, we're going to win the game on this play. And for example, the fake field goal, that's where I got the impression where he was like, we're going to win it right now. And it wasn't the same patience that they had, that play wasn't indicative of the patience that they showed in Chicago when they got a great ground out a great win, and in San Francisco when they did the same.
Great points. Doug, your thoughts?
Yeah, and although with the fake field goal, I think that has a lot to do with the fact that you don't totally trust your new kicker. I don't think there's any doubt. I gotta say, the one at the end, and I think this is what I love. One of the things you love about football. What do you do when you get it back with 1:55 to go and they've got 2 timeouts? I gotta say, we were sitting in the sports office, and I said out loud, what I do right now is run it 3 times, make them use their timeouts. You're probably not gonna get a first down because Carolina's terrific, and they're going to stack the box. Knowing that, you gave them 50, and I even said you can get them under a minute, no timeouts, and the way your defense was playing, I have no problem with that decision. In retrospect, did it work? Obviously not. You gave your defense one more shot, but at that point, Cam Newton had not made one play all game. He had done nothing. And the play he made on the 37-yarder to Ted Ginn, when he hung in there with the rush all around him, and it's his one best quality, and I think he's far from a great quarterback, but his one great quality is he's not going to flinch with somebody in his face.
Yes.
And he had guys all around him. He hung there, waited for Ted Ginn, and he made his one great play. And then the second one, Malcolm Jenkins has a clear shot on the touchdown pass, a clear shot at him, and Mike Tolbert gives him just enough of a chip to knock him off. I agree with Ramon completely. You can in no way pin the loss on the defense. In zero way is it their fault. What the fault was that you didn't have a bigger lead before that. Now, the offense didn't get it done.
And also, guys, when you look at this team, especially with the conditions on Sunday, the last person you thought would come out and would be the hot back, so to speak, would be Mark Ingram. But he came out and he ran the ball effectively. Now, again, was hurt a little bit because he started to cramp. He had to go get an IV. That retarded, I guess, his opportunity to be able to stay on the field. But you have to question why they didn't stay with the run more, why they didn't utilize Ingram more, when obviously he was running inside and he was running very well.
They ran the ball. What impressed me too, they ran the ball 20 times in the second half after. So they definitely committed to it. They definitely stuck to it, and it almost worked out. Ingram. It was unfortunate because he had to leave the game, and we're not entirely sure. It looked like he cramped up and maybe went in there to get hydrated.
Yeah, that's what it appeared to be.
Yeah, and but then when you look at the two, if I can just touch back, kind of building on that point, but then touch back on a little bit about what he said. The game was so confounding in that the offense got the one, you felt they just needed to break through one time, and they got it. Like, they got that potentially legendary 97-yard drive.
Yeah, it was spectacular.
It was the best drive of the season.
Yeah, it was incredible.
And then they needed one stop on defense at the end, and there was no indications that Cam Newton was going to be able to lead the drive that he did, and he did. And in the same way, the running game, the second half was clicking the entire time, except on the 2 drives where they needed. And in the very last drive where they needed to run the ball and be able to pick up a first down, and couldn't do it, and it cost them the biggest game of the season.
Although you're almost never going to be able to run the ball, and with 1:55, and they know you're trying to get to burn their timeouts, you're not playing a normal defense. There's nothing normal about trying to run the ball then. You're running it against 8 guys in the box. If you make the commitment to, you're not going to get the first down. You almost say, we're going to go 3. If we get a miracle and we get a hole, we'll get a first down. But at that point, you're probably saying, we're giving them the ball with under a minute and no timeouts. Right. And I think Sean Payton made that conscious decision that, you know what, they're probably going to get it back. But what you didn't want to do was have Drew Brees roll out, have to throw it away,
Right.
and then all of a sudden you're giving them a minute 30, and then you really can make a bigger case about blaming it on that.
And I love Thomas Morstead. I think he's a great man. He's a great player, and it's just when they needed him, he probably hit his worst punt that I've seen him hit this year.
All season.
Yeah,
all
no doubt.
season.
Yeah.
And
Because you expect them to be pinned deep.
Yeah.
You do. I mean, at the very least, they're going to be pinned deep. And the way the defense was playing, let me tell you something. They were playing lights out. I almost questioned again blitzing on that final play because they had played so well. They didn't. Obviously, they were very, very close to getting to Cam a couple times on that drive, but ultimately also maybe question Jenkins being the rusher instead of a Roman Harper, who's probably more apt to be able to rush the pass.
And it might have been Vaccaro if Vaccaro were still in
Boy,
there.
no kidding, huh? I mean, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on, but that is a huge loss. What about not running the football as effectively in the first half? In the first, not so much in the second half, because I agree with Ramon. They did run it better in the second half, but in the first half, when you really could have maybe set a tone.
Yeah, clearly they came out wanting to throw it. And to be honest with you, I thought at the beginning when they came out wanting to throw it, it had something to do with the weather forecast. They knew, I mean, if I know it, they know it. The storms were coming in the third quarter, so I looked at it as a way, you know what, we're going to throw the ball and try to get ahead. The fact is, you're not running or throwing in a vacuum. You're playing Carolina, who, if they're not the best defense in football, they're in the top 3. And you're not going to be efficient against them. You're not going to be great. The 97-yard drive, it was almost, just my feeling was almost like that San Francisco playoff game where once Jimmy Graham hits that touchdown, you're like, it's over, we win. When Jimmy Graham caught the jump ball in the end zone, I said, this one's over, they win. And, of course, I turned out to be wrong.
You and everybody else.
And everybody else. Well, to me, that's what's fun about it, is that
Exactly.
no matter what you know, you're still wrong half the time. That's why it's fun.
Yep.
And I thought it was over at that point. They had totally shut them down. I had no doubt the Saints were going to shut them down in that last 55 seconds. The Saints have a great game plan for Cam Newton. They know how to play him. He does not hurt him. They don't let him loose. I mean, he's going to get away once or twice, but not much. They know how to confuse him. He's not great at checking down.
Right.
He's still far from a great quarterback. He's a great athlete,
Yes.
but he's not Russell Wilson.
Right.
He doesn't make the decisions. He's not as accurate. And the Saints had a great plan for him, except for those 2 plays.
And they've contained his athleticism.
Completely.
I mean, he, unlike what happened with Russell Wilson, where he was able to dictate tempo by
Right.
getting outside, extending plays with his feet, they keep Cam in the pocket.
Yeah, Cam Newton came in averaging about 280 yards from scrimmage through his career, and in the first game they held him to 208. And on Sunday against Carolina, in Carolina, they held him to under 200 yards from scrimmage. So they were playing excellently against him. And I agree with what Doug said. I mean, they hold him. They know how to play him. And it's just Russell Wilson was, to me, he just does what Cam does just better, and he's more productive, and he makes the most of his opportunities throwing down the field much more than Newton does.
And nothing against Cam, but at this point in their careers, Russell Wilson, a more cerebral quarterback.
Oh, well, no doubt. I mean, if you look at the quarterback numbers, you look at quarterback rankings, Russell Wilson's in the top 5. Cam Newton's 18, 16, 20, fluctuates in the middle of the NFL. I still think Cam Newton, the light may go on for him. I mean, it goes on for people at different times.
Sure.
Sometimes, Drew Brees wasn't a great quarterback his first year in the NFL. I think Cam Newton still might get there. I don't mean to overly criticize him, but he's a pretty good NFL quarterback. I think his spectacular athleticism gets him overrated, but I think Russell Wilson, if you asked 32 NFL GMs and 32 NFL coaches who you can pick a quarterback for 2014, do you want Russell Wilson or Cam Newton? I'd be willing to bet at least 28 of each take Russell Wilson. I know I would.
I would agree with that as well. 2 controversial moves last week that had the fan base buzzing and really the nation buzzing when you talk about Sean Payton. To me, trying to send a message, trying to deliver a message to this team that every play from this point forward, you have to play it like it's your last. And that was the benching of Charles Brown and bringing Teron Armstead in and allowing him to play the left tackle position. Guys, I'll ask this question first. The experiment here, was it a failure or was it a good move based on what you saw on Sunday?
I think it's no secret that Armstead struggled. Within the first 25 minutes of elapsed time in that game, he had given up 2 sacks. He had been called for 2 false starts. However, I mean, he was in the game for 81 plays, and he in the second half, there's no doubt that they only gave up 1 sack. I mean, they gave up 5 sacks in the first half, which was already a season high at that point. But in the second half, they gave up 1 sack. They ran the ball 20 times. So when they helped them out a little bit, I think running the game, and they were able to, when they committed to it, I mean, they were still running the ball effectively throughout the game. So I think that's encouraging. I think that's definitely, I mean, it's his first start. I don't think he was trying to send a message when he said last week, Sean Payton said, we don't do that here. I truly think that he thought it was going to give them a better chance to win with Teron Armstead protecting the blind side for Drew Brees than Charles Brown, who was leading the Saints comfortably, the starters on the offensive line comfortably in QB hits allowed, sacks allowed, and false starts. So I think he felt that Armstead was going to give him a better chance to win the most important game of the year.
Doug, what's your take?
Yeah, I agree. I think, and it certainly wasn't a one-game thing. It was a whole season thing, and it wasn't just the numbers Charles Brown had given up. Charles Brown had given up the numbers while getting the most help. The Saints had chipped with backs, had chipped with tight ends. They had so overcompensated for him that at some point, I think Sean Payton said, we cannot completely run this offense around protecting our left tackle anymore. Now, obviously, when you put in Teron Armstead, and what's amazing to me is that not only is this a rookie starting, this is a rookie who played his college ball at Arkansas Pine Bluff. It's a SWAC school.
Yes.
He has never seen a crowd like this, an atmosphere like this, and I mean this in no offense to a guy who plays in the SWAC. There are a ton of NFL players who come out of that, but you're talking about a guy who didn't play in front of 90,000 people at Alabama or LSU or in one of the major conferences. This is a guy who played, in an FCS school against FCS talent. Now, Armstead is a phenomenal physical athlete. Put up one of the best combines for a tackle in NFL history.
Off the charts.
Off the charts. The vertical leap and the shuttle runs. This guy is a crazy athlete who now did have 10 weeks with the scout team. And I agree with Ramon. I don't think this was a punishment or sending a message. I think this was we are tired of completely running our offense around protecting our left tackle. Let's at least put a left tackle in there that maybe we do have to protect for a game or two, and maybe who is going to give up a couple of sacks to one of the best defensive ends in football, Greg Hardy, but a guy that we feel like long-term is going to be better for us. And Sean Payton said on Monday, we looked at the tape, we see a ton of positives. He's positively starting again. They're going to keep him there. When he got beat bad.
Yes.
But there were a lot of plays that he didn't, and he held his own. And when he got beat, it was going left, Hardy goes right, and it's a whiff. But when he got his hands on him, he did a job. I am not saying he had a good game. Obviously, you give up that many sacks, that's a bad game. But I would agree there are some signs for the future, and I would also agree at some point you're going to have to say, Charles Brown's not working. We have this kid who's a phenomenal athlete. Let's roll a dice on this guy.
And I think the question is the timing also. I mean, again, Brown comes off a pretty good game against Hardy in the Dome,
right.
Probably his best game of the year. You talked about game planning and protecting Brown, but yet, and I talked about it on my radio show this week, that they were game planning to protect Armstead as well, maybe more to protect Armstead than to protect Brees, especially the first time out. Kind of a tough spot for a young guy, as you mentioned, coming out of the SWAC, to put him in that position against, again, a pretty darn good pass rusher.
I still think that what explains everything. I mean, you don't send a message at that time of year, and so that's why I think he just was. Armstead is going to give us the best chance because he just. We kind of touched upon this in some of the stories that were written. If the confidence was gone in Hartley, then he had to, and Garrett Hartley, the kicker, then he had to go. If the confidence is gone in Charles Brown, then you have to put the next guy up.
And you guys cover the team. Do you feel from just conversations with the coaching staff, conversations maybe with Charles Brown, the vibe around the complex that maybe Charles Brown is a guy that after the Ram game had lost his confidence?
I didn't quite get that feeling. I wouldn't say that. I'm not sure he ever gained the complete confidence of his team, but the Saints would never say that.
Right.
I mean, especially on that offensive line. You're talking about guys like Zach Strief and Brian Delapuente and Jari Evans. These are good people, terrific offensive linemen. They're not gonna. If they're having a problem with Charles Brown, you would never know it. I can tell you that. You would never get that from those guys. But Charles Brown was clearly the weak link on this offensive line this year, just based on his performance. And at some point as a coach, how long do you stick with the weak link? Now, granted, it's an unproven commodity you're putting in there, but it's a commodity that you have some belief in.
And, I mean, the remarks that after the St. Louis game that Coach Payton made about Charles Brown, you could see that the writing was on the wall when he said, I saw enough of the penalties, enough of the sacks. Feelings get hurt, but I had, we had to do something. And I think the timing, it was like, if think of everything that could have, I mean, the number 2 seed, the NFC South title, by just winning that one game.
Yes.
And I think it was really like, if we can win this one game, and this move is going to give us the best chance to win this game and just this game. If I can stand up a little bit for Armstead, I mean, I watched all of Greg Hardy's sacks, and yes, he got beat on 2 of them.
Yeah.
The third one, the third sack that Hardy got in on, he split it with Addison. Brees held the ball for more than 5 seconds.
Yes.
I watched it. He held the ball for more than 5 seconds. After the game, Brees said, a couple of sacks of the 6 sacks that we gave up yesterday were on me because I held the ball too long. And that's specifically, I think, at least one of the plays that he was referring to. And then Hardy, when he got the other half sack that gave him 3 sacks on the day in the fourth quarter, which was the only one that they got in the second half, Armstead wasn't on Hardy. Hardy was working against Armstead was working against Addison. So he wasn't beat on that one. So, I mean, really, he got beat on 2 sacks. And then when you think about making his first start in Carolina, and they lost by 4 points, I mean, I think there's going to be plenty for him to build on.
And I've talked about it on my show this week. I think that the fan base is looking at kind of an attrition situation here with the loss of 3 Pro Bowl linemen. I mean, you lose Goodwin, you lose Nix, you lose Bushrod.
You don't lose them. You let them go.
You let them go. Right. And now you're in a position where you're bringing in other guys. You're not as big up front. Obviously, Goodwin was a much bigger center than De La Puente. You can look at Grubbs, even though we were told that Grubbs was going to be a guy that could fit right in. He's not as big as Carl Nix, nor is he the player Carl Nix was here. And again, you look at the drop-off, even though Bushrod was a guy that needed help at time and was the whipping boy for the fan base. For the most part, again, when there is a substantial difference between Brown, Armstead, and what you got out of Bushrod. I kind of equate that to what happened with LSU last year, losing so many juniors, underclassmen to the NFL. At some point, it's going to start to affect you. And in a timing offense, in an offense that again, would like to run the ball, but maybe really more of a passing offense, that this kind of parallels with what has happened at LSU, what's happening with the Saints now. The question is, going forward, do you think that this front office, that Sean Payton is happy with the group that he has going forward, or is this something in the offseason, especially with 3 of those guys, De La Puente, Streif, and I believe also Charles Brown now, all 3 free agents going into next season?
Well, Charles Brown, I think we've
he's
seen that, maybe you keep him as a backup, but my guess is, especially like you said, based on how strong the words were, they would be okay with that one. They love Armstead. I would get the feeling Streif would be back if they can do it. Look, in the modern salary cap era, you have to make choices. You just do. You have to pick between Marcus Colston or Carl Nix. I mean, you're going to have to make that call. And the Saints have invested, A or B, and decided to let offensive linemen go. And the fourth one, now this was early in their tenure, but Jamal Brown was also a Pro Bowler who they willingly let go in free agency. I thought Bushrod was a better player than he ever got credit for. Was he an elite left tackle? No. But was he 8th to 15th best? He was a solid NFL left tackle, and he has been in Chicago. Losing him, I thought, would hurt. It has. I think they like Armstead. How much they changed their mind about investing in offensive line? I don't know. That's an interesting question. Jimmy Graham is going to break the bank.
No, he will.
And you got to go get Jimmy Graham first, and you're not going to have a lot of money left after that. I mean, you're going to restructure a bunch of contracts.
Agree. That's going to happen.
But Jimmy Graham breaks the bank and doesn't leave you a lot.
Right. They will. There will be some players that will be asked to restructure. When you look at the offense, in a lot of cases, it can be hamstrung. When your offensive line is not protecting your breeze, when it's not opening up holes for the running game, it trickles down. It trickles down to everything. It makes the receivers look old and not the inability to get off the jam. Obviously, it hurts Breeze in terms of him not being able to climb that pocket. He doesn't feel comfortable. You see him on his tippy toes. toes trying to make throws. I don't remember him on his tippy toes when it was Goodwin, Nix, and Evans in there. He had a clear path in a lot of cases to throw the football. The offensive line we're learning now, especially with Breeze and kind of the twilight of his career, that they've got to upgrade that, or they've got to have a consistent offensive line that can protect Breeze and open up holes. Ramon, what's your take on the offensive line, where they are now, and do you anticipate changes in the offseason?
There's no question that I was looking at this earlier when there was, especially when they got off to that 5-0 start, but they were already showing signs of giving up, more sacks, and you still look at it, and it just shows you how spoiled kind of fans in New Orleans got, because Breeze is still, if you compare it to how much other quarterbacks in the league are pressured, he's still not under duress at the same way as many other quarterbacks throughout the league are. He's throughout the league. He's still. I know at one point in the season when they were well on pace to break the season high in sacks given up when Breeze was here, he was still like the sixth. He was ranked sixth lowest on pressure under throws. So I think it just shows he's just facing what. It's almost like one of my colleagues, Gary Smith, who does some work for us in the Advocate, put it best, where he's like, well, now he's kind of getting to live the life of he got paid very well, handsomely, and I think he deserved that contract.
Yes.
He's absolutely, but it's almost the flip side is getting paid elite money, but I think maybe some of that's trickled down with some of the players that have had to leave because of that, where he's living life what kind of regular QBs in the NFL are facing. So if you ask me, are there going to be questions? I can't say if you're going to ask me if there are going to be any changes in the offseason, I can't predict at this moment what they're going to be. But yes, I imagine that, I just can't see Charles Brown starting at left tackle.
Right.
I think it's way too early. One game that we saw from Armstead, and to me, maybe a lot of people would disagree with me, but when Sean Payton says that there were encouraging things on that film, I try to watch. I don't think they're covering. I don't think they're covering up for it.
I'm not sure he's not trying to believe that, though.
No, but I'm saying I don't think when he says there's encouraging things on the tape how Armstead played, I do see that. I do see that.
I don't disagree, although there were some discouraging things too. Yeah. I agree with you. I think this has been probably the weakest offensive line play we've seen in about 7 years. I think that's absolutely true. But what I'm saying is the Saints have only broken the bank once on the offensive line for Jari Evans. What I'm saying is I would love to see upgrades across the board. You asked, do you think they will? The Saints have not shown that that's where they want to spend money in the past. I'm not saying they shouldn't, that shouldn't be a priority. What I'm saying is it really hasn't been in the past based on letting those guys go. So predicting what they will do, my guess is they may not. They may say, we think Armstead is going to grow into our guy. We like what Ben Grubbs is doing for us. We love Jari. We like what De La Puente gets, and maybe try to keep Zach Strief at a reasonable price.
You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports. This is the post-Christmas edition of Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Got a great panel for you tonight. Doug Mouton, WWL TV Sports Director, and Ramon Vargas, also from the New Orleans Advocate. We take a quick break. We come back. We'll continue our conversation about the New Orleans Saints. We'll also touch on the Pelicans, as well as the Tigers and the Green Wave. You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports on WLAE TV.
Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by the Union Capital Corporation and Natel's Air Conditioning and Heating, a proud sponsor of the St. Jude Dream Home.
My life is full of statistics. Thing is, I could have dropped out of school and become one myself, but I didn't, because I had people that believed in me. Here's another statistic. 7,000 students drop out every school day. That's one every 26 seconds. It's time that students know that we believe in them.
Inspire a student and share your message of support at boostup.org.
You're watching WLAE, New Orleans Public Television. Find us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter.
Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Merry Christmas to all, and I hope you guys had a great Christmas. Joining us on the program tonight is Doug Mouton of WWL-TV, of course, the sports director there, as well as Ramon Vargas of the New Orleans Advocate. Guys, let's stay with the Saints. And I've been getting a lot of calls on my radio show saying that the Saints are predictable, that after 8 years of this offense, that defensive coordinators have caught on, and that Peyton has to do some self-scouting in the offseason to change some things up. You guys cover this team on a regular basis. Doug, I'll take you first. Do you believe this offense has become too predictable?
Well, they do an enormous amount of self-scouting. That part I'm sure of. They look at themselves and study their own tendencies perpetually. So it's not the amount of self-scouting. Predictable's a little interesting, but I've always thought, like for instance, when Mark Ingram was in the game for 2 years, you knew they were going to run it. They just wouldn't throw it when he was in the, there were so many things they just would do or wouldn't do. To me, it's part of why the offense always worked better with Darren Sproles, because they would run some sweeps and maybe even a draw with Sproles, but they'd also throw it downfield with it. They were more unpredictable with Sproles in the game. It's an interesting point. I'm not sure. I'd want to hear a defensive coordinator say that. The offense is still putting up solid numbers, still top 5 or 6 in the NFL. It's not like you're not putting up great numbers. You said it before. People are a little spoiled. This is not 09. This is not 11. This is a new team. This team is way better defensively, but offensively, they're not quite as good as those teams, but they're still plenty good enough to advance deep in the playoffs offensively.
And we see them every week. So, if you're a fan, you see what's going on. You almost can predict at times what they're going to do. But I agree with you. There are certain formations where you know what they're going to do.
But that's been that way even in 09.
I would agree with that. Ramon?
Who's stopping him at the Superdome? I think if you look at the level of, I'll say, for example, like Drew Brees, his passer rating at the Superdome is 120.1 this season. Okay, through 14 games, Peyton Manning was leading the league before this week's games with 112.1, just to kind of show you just how effective they are at the Superdome. I think what we should take away, I guess, from this season is just this baffling, the baffling Jekyll and Hyde act that they have, where they're this. You can make an argument that no team in the NFL plays better than the Saints do at the Superdome.
They're a juggernaut.
Because just the numbers, that the discrepancy is just, and so when you say that, are they predictable? No one's been able to stop them at home. I know you got to go out and win on the road. That's a huge part of it. They're not the same team as they are on the road. I think that if there's any questions about their predictability, I think it might just be the frustration of not being able to understand. And trust me, I've tried every week asking them what's the deal, and you never get the same answers twice. And I think maybe that it's just the inability to explain why did they play so poorly on the road.
Yeah, I agree completely. In that building, I did an Atlanta radio show before the Carolina game in the Superdome. I said, you know what? I think the Saints win by 3 touchdowns. I would bet my house they win by double digits. And the guy on the Atlanta radio, he said, are you crazy? And I said, I'm just telling you, the Saints in the Superdome at night, Sean Payton has this magical way, I call it harnessing the Superdome. He straps it around and puts it on his back and runs that place. It's magical, especially at night. And then on the road, it's like a whole different team. Although I thought this week they played significantly better.
Yes.
But if you look at the 8 road games, they played one really, although I would argue this would be a second really good road game, even though they lost to a good team. The Chicago game, where they purposely dialed down, played conservative because of what Chicago does. That was a well-run, well-managed game. And they've been okay on the road, in Atlanta, in Carolina, in New England.
Yes.
A couple of wins and a loss. But then, boy, the clunkers in St. Louis and Seattle are just totally unexplainable for a team that should be so much better.
Well, go ahead.
It could be. The team is young. The team, and that's what they say. He's got this veteran presence, but I think after Garrett Hartley's departure this week, there's like 10 left from the Super Bowl team, right? So there's still they have a veteran kind of contingent on the team, but how many? There were like 10 rookies
10 undrafted
rookies that made this team.
Yeah.
So
especially on the defensive side of the ball.
And so I wonder if again, if all that kind of plays into it, and I know these are kind of themes that come up whenever you start asking them about it, and we've got this idea that they still have this veteran presence, but I mean, for many of these players, I mean, this is the first time they're kind of going through some of these things.
I would agree. Another concern is the inability to close out games, especially to be able to get that first down. We've seen it in New England, and we saw it rear its ugly head again in Carolina. Look, it's tough to run the ball, even if you're a great running team, when everybody in the stadium knows you're going to run the football. But this is 2 times in which they could not get a first down to close a game out.
Yeah, and actually, to me, the biggest worry going forward, and that's been bad, is that now you're without 2 of your best 3 cover corners in Jabari Greer and Patrick Robinson, and you're without clearly your best safety in Kenny Vaccaro. I thought Kenny Vaccaro had an all-pro season. I mean, I thought this guy has been terrific. What he did so often was it was such a great tackler, which is something the Saints have so lacked.
The best on the team, I thought.
No doubt. And so many plays, granted, he'd make a tackle 8 yards downfield, but last year that play would have been a 28-yard gain. And when you start limiting those and limiting the other team's big plays, I thought Vaccaro was terrific. And now you're talking about heading into the playoffs without 3 of your best 5, or hopefully heading into the playoffs without 3 of your 5 best DBs. But not closing out games hurts. That's 2. Although, on the flip side, they did close out Atlanta in a huge way. They did close out the first Tampa game in a huge way. You haven't been – it's not like you're 0-5 in those games. You're 500 in those games. It's just, again, we're a little spoiled from 11-09 when the team really was a juggernaut, and this team's not quite a juggernaut.
You mentioned Vaccaro. I'll throw Raphael Bush in there as well.
No doubt.
He has been a big loss, and now you compound that with the loss of Greer, the loss of Vaccaro, and the loss of Bush. Again, they put a lot of 3 safety early in the season.
The whole season.
And honestly, one of the reasons why is Bush and Vaccaro and their ability, their range, this is something that will hurt them going forward, depending on how far they go. Ramon?
Yeah, I mean, you're hoping at this point that Bush is going to be returning, especially it's urgent. With I think with the news that we got from Kenny Vaccaro. So it's been some time now since that injury. So I mean, you're hoping that if they all they need to do is beat in their fortress, all they need to do is beat a 4-11 team, and they're in the playoffs. And
a team that's 1-6 on the road,
right?
And so you're hoping that that you get the help from Bush when he comes back.
Yeah, and then you have to worry about, again, something we'll talk about, which is winning outdoors, which is a problem they've had. Yeah. I mean, again, you talk about the inability. The defense has played so great all season long, but yet inability to close out New England, inability to close out at Carolina. Obviously, that hurts. But, I mean, for the most part, this defense has been stout.
Yeah, and we've had a couple of stars emerge. Cam Jordan has emerged as a legitimate NFL star. Akeem Hicks has emerged. That turned out to be, looks like a great draft pick. He is a monster, and he is going to get so much better. Curtis Lofton's had a terrific year.
I'll throw John Jenkins in there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Junior Galette's had a good year. I mean, we've got guys who have emerged who are all on the upslope. I mean, you talk about on offense, maybe some of your best players are on the downside. Clearly, Colston and the rest have a few years left. But on defense, you got a bunch of guys on the upside. Regardless of, and I know the last few weeks have been disappointing for Saints fans, but I think regardless, I think there's a ton of reasons for optimism, mostly on defense. And you even had Victor Butler this year, and you're going to get him back next year. I think there's a lot of reasons to think this team had a little bit of a rebirth. Talked about 10 rookie unsigned guys, undrafted guys.
They didn't know, I think that they didn't know they had, or were not counting on. They were counting on the Vilmas and the Smiths to come in and play. And this was kind of, an unknown commodity that they found. And all of a sudden now, instead of thinking you got to retool this defense, you're in pretty decent shape. You probably maybe have to add someone in the defensive backfield, but when you look across the defensive line, you look at the linebacker position right now, they're in pretty darn good shape.
Yeah, if I wanted to make an admission and share something, I remember when I was talking to Junior Galette before the Atlanta game, and this is remember he didn't play a single snap of preseason games. And he because he got hurt in training camp, and when they lost Will Smith and they lost Victor Butler, and then they had lost also Kenyon Coleman, and the Saints were gonna go with Galette was gonna be their starting outside linebacker, And I remember like asking him, like, are you at all worried that, you know, you're about to play the season opener against Atlanta, and you haven't played a single snap of preseason? And he's like, look, he said he did it very respectfully, and he did want to point out that he respected Smith, and he respected some, Butler. But he's like, I think if those guys were around, I'd still be in this position, and you're going to see. And I mean, there he is, and he's posted a career high in sacks, and he's not shy about how he wanted to have a Pro Bowl year. And maybe it's because I'm around the guys all the time. You talk to him, and you like talking to him. He's a great quote.
He's one of the most gregarious, easy to get along. And the Saints, that's one thing that I. Both as a New Orleanian and as a person who covers the team, one thing I really like about the team is that Sean Payton puts high emphasis on getting character guys. I mean, you're not going to find better people than Pierre Thomas or Marcus Colston or Lance Moore or Zach Strief or Jermon Bushrod, who they let go. I mean, you've just got a lot of good people. Junior Gillette is on the top of that list, too. Curtis Loft. I mean, just guys that win or lose, they lose by 4 touchdowns or throw up a total egg in St. Louis, and you walk in that locker room, and every one of those guys will stand up and talk to you. They're not babies or they don't throw tantrums, prima donnas. I mean, these are men who step up, and I like what they've done with this team. And Junior Gillette, one of the great stories this year.
I mean, again, they now have bookends, which again you didn't think that they haven't had since when Haslett era. Really, you got to go back that far to really have that type of team. They've had problems winning outdoors. It looks as though they're going to be traveling in the playoffs now. Guys, how far can this team go in your mind? I mean, again, I know there's a sour taste in a lot of people's mouth at the Carolina game. That made the panacea maybe the Tampa Bay Buccaneers this weekend. Yeah. You would think the Saints are going to win. They know what's on the line. They're going to come out. They're in the dome. It's a 3:25 kickoff. Everything falling their way there. But realistically, for a team that hasn't been able to do it all season long outdoors, how do you think they'll do this in this upcoming postseason?
Let me put it this way. I mean, you've got Drew Brees at quarterback. You've got Sean Payton as head coach, and he's a great head coach. And the way the season's gone, for them to all of a sudden go on a tear and make a Super Bowl, like, would it really surprise anybody? But 47 years of history, and the Saints have never won on the road in the wild card round, and the divisional round, or a conference championship game. A team that has lost 5 of its last 6 games on the road, and plays so wildly, just their level of production is so much lower on the road. Is that really going to be the team? What evidence do you have that that's going to be the team that's going to win the first of those games or reel off 3 to get to a Super Bowl? Again, I mean, if anyone that's got blind, I mean, crazier things have happened, and I personally think that there are worse teams that have gone on greater runs.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think that that if they win, if this team does pull off a wild card round, that they'll be able to also win. And again, it's crazy because we still need to see if they make the playoffs, or if they don't clinch the NFC South and the 2 seed.
All that's still out there.
That's still out there.
They could be the 2, the 5, the 6, or not get in at all.
No doubt.
To me, and I brought it up because I'm thinking playoffs. You go to Philadelphia, and Philadelphia looked good Monday night or Sunday night. You go to Philadelphia in round 1, the way they throw the ball, the way they spread it out, and you don't have – and Patrick Robinson, I think, is an underrated loss because Patrick Robinson can cover. Without Patrick Robinson, without Jabari Greer, and without Kenny Vaccaro, against that team, they spread it around. Yes. I think you get those 3 guys, you got a much better chance. But if you can win there, assuming that's it, and that's just – maybe the best odds of where you would go, you would have to win in Carolina and in Seattle. Now, can they do any one of those? Sure. Can you do 3 back-to-back-to-back? I agree with Ramon. I think worse teams have gone on runs. I mean, look at the New York Giants. A couple of years ago, they get shellacked by the Saints in December or late November in the Superdome, go on a Super Bowl run. Is it possible? Sure. I agree with Ramon. I wouldn't put any money on it.
It really comes down to matchups and ultimately who they're going to have to deal with. And we'll see. I mean, I'm with you guys. I find it, when I look at the body of work this season, I find it hard to be able to say this team can make a run, considering they have to go on there. Now, if this was a situation where they had the second seed, they had the bye, they were playing at home, you know what? I think they got a heck of a chance.
Then you got to win one on the road.
That's it.
Yeah.
And maybe not even that, depending on what happens with Seattle and that matchup. Because a Carolina going to Seattle or San Francisco going to Seattle, there's no guarantee that they win that game.
Right.
So, but I mean, at this point, that's kind of evaporated. You're going to have to take the hard road if you're going to win it all. Let's shift gears and talk a little bit about the Pelicans. Doug, I'll take you first. You know, the Pelicans under 500, but you know, they've had some injuries. Where they are right now with the first quarter of the season, your thoughts on the identity of this team?
Yeah, it's interesting. I still think they're trying to find one. And Monty Williams has gotten a lot of criticism early in the year. I still think we haven't even got to the 30-game mark. I think anyone who thought with as much roster shuffling as we were going to get that this team was going to be a well-oiled machine 20 games in is a little crazy. And a rough West Coast trip, which has thrown them a few games under 500. Yes. But to be hanging around 500 at the 30-game mark, I don't think that's a bad place to be.
It's probably about where everybody thought you would be.
That's probably about where you thought they would be if things were going okay.
Exactly.
Anybody who thought you'd be better than 500 after 30 is crazy.
In the tough West?
In the tough, what you hope is that what you hope for this team this year is that after, let's say, 50 games, you're 500. And then in that last 30, now you know each other. Let's see if we can go 20-10 in the last 30 and make a run for the 8th seed. But everyone acknowledged that was going to be tough. I think it's going about what we thought. I think we're still trying to find the identity. I said it before the season. I still believe it. By far the biggest thing on this team, I mean 10-1 to anything else, is the development of Anthony Davis. Yes. And Anthony, I think he is, and I said this before the year, and I'm starting to look smart, which is crazy. He's starting to look like he is.
Oh, yeah.
He's got a better offensive game than people gave him credit for, and he is still a kid. Yeah. I think this guy is going to be an NFL star an NBA star at the highest level.
I agree.
I think you're seeing that, and I think just that makes it a very good start to the season. Are they going to win a championship this year?
No.
Not a chance on earth. Are they going to win it next year? Not a chance on earth. But we're building for 3 or 4 years from now, and I see a ton of positive signs for that.
I would agree. Ramon?
I agree with Doug. I think at this point, I mean, it would have been nice to see them beat a team with a winning record at this point of the year.
That'd be nice. Sure.
But I think give them time. I mean, if they're within striking distance and can go on a late season run and make the playoffs, I mean, what else could you have asked for?
They've added was it Ajenka? The center from Europe, and I got to tell you right now, he seems to have a high basketball IQ.
Sure, yeah.
He's long, he can run, he is a shot blocker, and again, a rim protector, which is what they have lacked, honestly. If you look through the first quarter of the season, they've lacked that rim protector, and really relying on Ryan Anderson and Jason Smith when Davis went out, and Davis, obviously, who is a better off-the-ball defender, a shot blocker, than he is on the ball. And we'll see how, again, with the body of work with this guy could be, but quite a find coming from Europe.
Yeah, but they thought Greg Steemsma would be that guy,
yes.
and he still may be. He's been hurt. And they thought Jeff Withey was a guy maybe who could develop it. I think they
and he still may.
And he still may. I think they recognize that weakness. But the one thing that I liked about this team, they built a team with, especially given the ages, they built a team to not make an NBA championship run this year. They built a team to be built over the course of the next few years where they can grow up together. But yeah, clearly Anthony Davis needs a big body to protect him. That's why they got Steemsma. At the time, with the money they had left to spend, Steemsma was the best buy on the market, and he gets hurt. So now you really haven't been able to see all the parts.
Just shows you how different the NBA and the NFL are, because that team being built to win, to be good in 2 or 3 years, and it just struck me that a few weeks ago we were talking to Coach Payton, and he's like, the plan even in 06 was to win and win now. And I mean, obviously it's in the NFL, it's much easier to do.
It is, and it's a little bit different, obviously, than what you're doing
absolutely.
in the NBA.
Sure.
I guess one of the big questions is Monty Williams. He's been under a lot of criticism in the first part of this year. This is a guy that again, believes in defensive principles. He's got an offensive team. The question is, can Monty adjust to the personnel that's on the floor?
I still think, I think if you're dead set, Monty's got to go, I think you're jumping the gun. I think if you're dead set, Monty's the guy, I think you're being a little hasty there too. I don't think we know yet. I think let's let this season play out. Let's see where this team is at the 50-game mark, because I never believed the first 30 games were going to be pretty. Right. And I think anyone who did was being unrealistic. And I don't think the Pelicans did either from Dell Demps on down. I'm not saying I'm committed to Monty as the guy, but I'm also not saying I've given up on him yet. Let's get to the 50 games. Let's see what this team is doing. And I agree, especially offensively, over that last 30 games. Let's see, when we put it together, what we have, and then let's make a judgment after game 70. Not quite yet.
Yeah, and they've got some nice pieces. I mean, look, Ryan Anderson, again, really underrated.
Great find.
And really, and again, when you look at what he cost you, $8.5 million,
right.
Come on. I mean, he is a bargain. Holiday, again, I would like to see him be more aggressive on the offensive end, but again, you get an all-star point guard. I mean, how many times do we have one of those guys fall in your lap? And then you look at Al-Farouq Aminu, his progress so far. I mean, again, he was a guy that you didn't even want dribbling or touching the ball last season.
And that's a Monty Williams project.
I would agree. And after a year, obviously, with playing in the Olympics, he's come back a better player. So you've got some pieces there. You throw in Tyreek Evans, who again is trying to find himself. They've got a nice core. The question is, can they mesh and can they play together?
Yeah, I don't think we know yet. But I see Drew Holiday and Tyreek Evans coming up court, not quite knowing. You know, you need to, when you're coming up court, you got to know exactly what the guys around you are going to do, what they're thinking. And I don't see that kind of synchronization yet. And I think hopefully by the 50, 60 game mark we will.
I would agree. Guys, let's shift gears and talk some Tulane. Tulane coming off, again, a great season, exceeded all expectations. And I'll take you first, Doug. Doug, your thoughts about how CJ has transformed this team in year two? I mean, a heartbreaking loss to ULL in the New Orleans Bowl, but my gosh, who would have thunk it? I mean, at this point.
Here's what I loved. First thing before the season, CJ says, my roster has more Louisiana kids than at any point in Tulane history. And this is the part that I really like, because I believe this big time. He said, it's not just because of the talent in Louisiana. I believe it's because of the high school coaching these kids are getting in Louisiana. I am getting kids who are ready, and I am willing to stake my job and the jobs of my assistant coaches on the high school coaching that these kids get in Louisiana. And what you have, this team built the way a Sean Payton team would like to, the way Nick Saban likes to build, the way Bill Belichick likes to build. They have got a great secondary. They built with a secondary with Lorenzo Doss and Jordan Batiste on the outside from Lutcher and St. Augustine, local kids, Darien Monroe, East St. John. You've got the secondary of local kids who are growing up, learning how to play. Lorenzo Doss, one of the great stories. I asked him after the New Orleans Bowl, how many big-time schools recruited you? He said Tulane was the biggest. Nobody wanted him. Second-team All-American from Sports Illustrated and deserved it. A lockdown, shutdown cornerback of the highest level.
Who's going to play on the next level.
Who's going to play on the next level despite his size. He'll be like a nickel back, and he'll be a good one. Curtis Johnson recognized he could win quicker with defense, built his defense, plays all man-to-man, not all, but vast majority man-to-man. Let the other guys play the run. It's a defense that has worked. It's not just a good defense for Tulane. It's a good defense for college football. They need a lot of help on offense.
And it'll come, though.
And they need
especially
to get
with
way
the plethora
better at quarterback.
of athletes you have.
Correct. But I love the way he's built the team. I love the way he built it with local players, and I love the way he built it on local coaching. Yes. I think it's a great formula. It's working, and I think it's going to work for him long-term in a big way.
Ramon?
As far as Curtis Johnson and the resurgence of this program, I spent my Saturday night watching Tulane play a bowl game.
As did I.
And
who would have thought we'd be doing that, right?
Right, and that was the day before the biggest game for the Saints season. Just some thoughts. I mean, Ryan Grant impressed me, I guess, with his pass catching ability.
And Darkwa as well. Is a guy.
He can stay healthy.
I mean, he's almost looks like a little Pierre Thomas clone there. You know, I mean, he really does.
That's I like that analogy. That's good. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it was a heartbreaking way to see Cairo Santos' career and the way it did on that miss. However, I mean. Why was it heartbreaking? Because his fantastic 2012 season, I mean, he
doesn't
really
overshadow his career though.
Oh no, I mean, but I'm saying it's fantastic. When he won the Lou Groza Award, I mean, that people were talking about Tulane last year because of him, and but it was a great game, and it was tough to see them to see the way it ended for local fans.
Guys, we've got about 2 minutes left. Really quick, LSU in the Outback Bowl taking on Iowa.
I can't wait to see Anthony Jennings get a whole game.
Yes.
Let's see what he can do. It's obviously the next phase. LSU has a chance with this recruiting class coming in this year, one of the greatest classes in Louisiana history. If LSU can get a bunch of them, we could see the next great wave of LSU coming. That's what I'm looking past the Outback to National Signing Day already.
And it is key. This is a key signing day because of the plethora of athletes we have in Louisiana.
Not just the plethora, but the level. A plethora of elite guys.
I would agree. Ramon?
There's been a question about, I've heard questions about whether, LSU is going to be able to get itself up to play against an Iowa, obviously not playing in the kind of bowl that they want it to be. However, I agree. I'm really excited to see how Jennings does, especially after the way he closed out that game against Arkansas.
I'll also be interested to see how many of these juniors now will defect to the NFL. Again, you're going to probably take some big losses on the offensive side of the ball.
No doubt.
You look at the two inside guys on the defensive line. You kind of hope that those guys, that Ferguson
I think Anthony
and Johnson will stay.
needs to come back.
Right.
He's not a first-round draft pick anymore, I don't think. I think for his own benefit, he should come back.
I would agree. Guys, thanks so much for being with us. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the panel. Doug Mouton of WBL TV, sports director over there, and Ramon Vargas of the New Orleans Advocate. Thanks again, guys. Really appreciate it. And thank you so much for tuning in tonight for the post-Christmas edition of Inside New Orleans Sports. Remember, there's a rebroadcast of this program each and every Friday night at 10 o'clock here on WLAE. And you can also catch me on the radio weekdays, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. on WGSO 990 a.m. If you've missed any of these previous programs here on Inside New Orleans Sports, you can check them out at ericasher.com. You can also check out my podcast at ericasher.com as well. You can follow me on Twitter at Eric_Asher. Also, want to give special thanks to the crew here at WLAE, the production staff, as well as Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, Donovan Joseph, Kenny Juneau, and of course my producer, director, William Hill. For Doug Mouton, for Ramon Vargas, my name is Eric Asher. Have a great evening, have a great rest of your Christmas holiday, and I'll see you right back here, 6 o'clock on Thursday night for Inside New Orleans Sports. Good night and Merry Christmas.
Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by the Union Capital Corporation and Natel's Air Conditioning and Heating, a proud sponsor of the St. Jude Dream Home.